Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. It's hosted by the Georgia chapter of HFMA. I'm Laurie Heavey. I'm a Georgia HFMA Education Committee volunteer. I hope many of you were able to join us for one or more of the webinar sessions we conducted earlier this month as part of the HFMA Region 5 Virtual Education Day. We had a lot of great content, which you can find on the Florida HFMA website if you weren't able to attend and you want to check it out. We'll conduct another Region 5 Virtual Education Day in October, so please be on the lookout for information in the coming months. Before we get started with today's session, I'd like to take a second to recognize and thank our chapter sponsors whose logos you can see here on the screen right now. Thanks again, we really appreciate your support. Before we get started with the presentation, just a few housekeeping items. I think many of you are attending webinars these days, so we know the drill, but all phone lines are going to be on mute to avoid interruptions during the broadcast. Please submit your questions using the questions box at any time. I'll coordinate with our presenters for their answers at the end of the presentation. I'm also just sending this chat to everybody. You'll find the link to download the presentation as well as the instructions to navigate the Georgia HFMA website to download the presentation. We'll have that, it's there obviously, and we'll have the link for the recording and other links within 48 hours via email. Everyone on today's call is eligible to receive continuing education credit for participating. Be on the lookout for this form in your email. You'll be able to use the form to self-submit for your credit on the HFMA website under the membership info tab. And I'll be sending that, so the email will be coming from me, lheavey@clearbalance.org. So be on the lookout for that, probably Friday afternoon. The topic of today's session is one most of us have been dealing with for several months now, and likely we're going to be continuing to manage through the rest of the year and into 2021. It's embracing a virtual workforce. And it's my pleasure to introduce today's speakers, Anne Rhoades, Janice Ridling, and Amber Kirkpatrick. Anne is the founder of People Ink, an organization that works with companies to revisit and develop people-based cultures. Anne is well respected for her unique approach to creating customer-centric cultures and is a popular speaker on the subject of customer service and building high-performance organizational cultures. Before founding People Ink, Anne served as Chief People Officer for a couple of well-known brands, including Southwest Airlines and Promise Hotel Company, which is the parent of DoubleTree and other hotel brands. And she also previously was the Executive VP for JetBlue Airways. Janice is managing partner of Osborne Ridling & Associates Healthcare, a healthcare consulting firm. Janice focuses on for-profit, not-for-profit, and university-based healthcare providers. Janice formerly was a revenue cycle leader with Baptist Health System in Birmingham, and under her direction, Baptist Health was awarded the HFMA MAP Award, not one, not two, not three, but on 5 occasions. So congratulations for that. Janice, too, is a noted speaker on various healthcare topics. And finally, Amber is Vice President of Client Operations at CaptureNet, which focuses on creating new best practices through its hybrid software service solution for comprehensive active self-pay management. Amber brings to CaptureNet extensive experience in denials management, underpayment review, and client management. In 2016, Amber led the charge in building CaptureNet's distributed call center, implementing a work-from-home model spanning the nation with customer care team members who live in the communities served by CaptureNet's hospital clients. So Amber, Janice, and Anne, we are ready to begin.
Great, thank you.
Although many business offices have had at least some experience with work-from-home employees for certain RCM functions, not until now has the concept taken on the characteristics of a requirement. With COVID, most hospitals have grappled with the swift implementation of work-from policies and bootstrapped startups, encumbered by the absence of adequate technology and accountability for a sustained model. The adage, necessity is the mother of invention, sort of comes to mind. COVID is changing the workscape for our workforce. In this presentation, we address the concept of a distributed/virtual workforce, the value of such a workforce, address conventional objections, and discuss remarkable success stories, including models for telephony, hiring, training, employee culture, patient sat, and KPI reporting. One of my favorite stories is I was one of the founders of JetBlue Airways, and as a case study, it's really interesting because almost 21 years ago, we started at-home res agent centers, and our customer care is taken care of today by thousands of employees sitting at home. And what started us doing that is when we started at JFK, and it's a very difficult place to recruit to, obviously. We decided we would start a call center in the Southwest, specifically in Utah. And we started interviewing people who literally said, why don't you, instead of building a $7 million call center, why don't you let us work from home? Today, we have thousands of employees working from home in our different centers, in call centers. We have a few managers, but thousands of people work from home. And they have become very virtual, and we were one of the first virtual service centers in the United States. Today, we calculated we have saved over $20 million in bricks and mortar costs. Our turnover is about 7% on an annual average versus the industry average of 25%. Our cost per call is $1.50 versus an average cost for other members of our industry is over $3. We have won the J.D. Power Award for highest service for 13 years in a row, and that has never happened in aviation prior to our winning it, obviously, in the last few years. One of the critical differences, though, and I would make a point of this because I think it's important for you all to think about, we started by creating a values blueprint. There were 9 of us who sat in a building in New York City, and we said, who do we want to be when we grow up? What will be the values that will define us? But most importantly, what are the reciprocal behaviors? Once we decided that, and you can see the model here, these are the values even today of JetBlue 21 years later. But what's important are to me, the reciprocal behaviors. And we hired people using what's called a behavioral modeling, in which I will talk about later on in our conference. And by the way, we also found that the analogies between aviation and healthcare are significant. Our company, People Ink, has worked in 17 healthcare systems since our inception 21 years ago. And the analogies we have found are incredible. And CaptureNet was one of those companies that we worked with and is one of the cases is going to be the case you hear about today. They are a terrific example of using the at-home workforce.
Case in point, CaptureNet moved to an at-home model in 2016 to better support our customers. The model is designed to provide more of a local sound and feel by hiring team members directly in the communities that we serve. We found that not only did we get a lift in customer service because of the customer care representatives better empathizing with their neighbors and members of their community, but we also found additional flexibility in the scheduling, providing better availability to those needing assistance with their patient billing needs. Our clients appreciate the model because we're hiring in the communities that they also serve. We work with local recruiting and job placement firms in addition to junior and technical colleges to bring on the right team members for this position. CaptureNet focuses on hiring candidates who show empathy and possess customer service and work from home experience and steer clear of heavy collection agency work history. We focus on behaviors and competencies when hiring, and as Anne mentioned, we'll talk more about this shortly.
There are a lot of conventional issues why we as an industry have not in the past, with exception of maybe medical records and some of those places, had people work from home. And some of the concerns with that have been expressed in the past, we're going to go through here. But with the advent of the COVID virus crisis, working from home has become the new normal. It's typically that this change in times of adversity would create concerns among healthcare financial leadership. During this presentation, we're going to be focusing on what traditional concerns have been and why they should not be concerns anymore. The first issue is no direct supervision of staff. One of the concerns expressed by leadership is that staff working from home will not have direct supervision. However, can manage work relationships by laying out the foundation for smart, supportive work environments. We will be discussing some effective methods to ensure that the remote employees remain connected to their team and their supervisors. Another concern expressed by leadership is the loss of sense of team. This is a concern that's extremely important because we all know that it is what ties employees to the organization. And having the right leadership in place is the key to the success. And we're going to cover some of those issues further on. We'll share some ideas around choosing the right leadership and focus on the outcomes, not so much as time in the office. The cost of telephony is a concern for any new process. The expense associated with it, the working or the use of telephones will certainly show up as an increase in your monthly budget. While this is true, we'll be discussing advances in technology and/or the elimination of brick and mortar workspace, having the potential to make up for the expense. Difficulty training employees is often a concern. Disquiet centered around training is often brought up as a matter of apprehension. We'll be discussing tools and ways to enhance learning online for remote employees. Managing, maintaining, reporting productivity. This is a big one. Management is often concerned that remote employees will be difficult to manage their productivity. When revenue cycle leaders were polled during a recent Florida HFMA survey, working from home, the online presentation, 70% of those on the call were most concerned about managing productivity. Yet surveys tell us that stay-at-home employees are more productive than those that are office-based. We have some great ideas on how to monitor, report performance and productivity, some of them using the basic HFMA KPI indicators. And lastly, one of the big concerns has been diminished patient satisfaction. At present, healthcare leaders not only have to deal with the dynamics of regulation, market forces, but equally important, they must deal with the increasing expectations for standards of care and service by patients. With the movement of employees to work from home environment, there is apprehension about the impact of patient satisfaction. However, the linkage between patient and employee satisfaction has been studied quite a bit, providing a positive linkage between the two. So working from home provides a more satisfying environment for the employee, which translates into higher patient satisfaction scores.
So building a strong infrastructure is probably the most important task when building your virtual workforce. You need to lean into your IT, your operations, and your workforce management subject matter experts. If these positions do not already exist on your team, you want to create them and fill them first. Ensure that your team has access to the necessary tools to be successful while ensuring safety protocol and compliance measures are met. Establish a secure method to connect back to workflow managers, patient accounting systems, medical records, remits, shared folders, any other PHI that your team will require to perform their responsibilities. VPN software to secure a connection back to servers is a common way to do that. To keep a light and nimble footprint, consider using cloud-based services. Examples include cloud-based telephony, cloud-based document storage, and encrypted chat. The actual hardware that your remote task force uses is equally important. I suggest that you select a standardized equipment setup suitable for team members to perform their responsibilities while working from home. The PCs need to be capable of performing the tasks while connected to a VPN software, yet flexible enough for needed upgrades and maintenance. The ancillary equipment should be standardized for troubleshooting and replacement as well. Ensure your PCs are equipped with software so your help desk can roll out necessary patches and updates regularly to keep the equipment running. The health of the equipment is absolutely integral to keeping your team productive. I should also mention that we found it necessary to keep extra setups on hand, so a replacement PC or headset or keyboard can quickly be shipped or picked up in the event that a malfunction leaves a team member without the ability to work. To do this, you need to ensure that your help desk team is set up to support a work from home team and develop KPIs to help manage their responsibilities. For example, when a patient billing representative experiences a technical issue, depending on the severity, they're instructed to create a help desk ticket. The ticket should specify the level of urgency in the technical situation, whether or not they can work, if they have a limited availability to work, or they can't work at all. The help desk is responsible for contacting the patient billing representative based on the severity in the appropriate time frame. The help desk ticketing system then provides the length of time from the point the ticket was created to troubleshooting and then resolution. So this leads me to establishing practices and protocols. Establishing your work from home practices is important to the success of your team. Clear expectations and consistent application of your work from home policies are absolutely key to their success. Cohesive communication with your team ensures that everyone is on the same page and functioning as a unit. When communication and consistency is lacking, it's easy for team members to feel abandoned or misled. These team members will have performance issues and your attrition rate will rise. You want to establish work from home policies. Establishing a work from home policy with clear expectations regarding compliance, network requirements, technical or troubleshooting needs, timekeeping, schedule adherence, productivity, and communication protocols are just a few of those policies. Outlining and providing clear direction on scenarios that will happen in the work from home environment will help your leaders better manage their team. Ensure your management team is applying the policy uniformly and holding all team members accountable. This type of structure will also minimize attrition. Unclear expectations or constantly changing policy will drive work from home team members to quit. Here are a few examples. Create a work from home agreement that all team members are held accountable for. The agreement assures that they're meeting minimum necessary KPIs for the role in a work from home environment. Productivity or aging requirements are examples of those. Ensure that your team member signs off on the policy and commitments. And if the team member begins to slip, have a team lead work with an individual to correct the course. If the team member cannot hit their KPI after coaching and developing, depending on the role and the location, they may be asked to come back to the office until performance improves. Also, create a policy which outlines both the technical requirements for the work from home position, like internet speeds and troubleshooting responsibilities, prior to engaging the help desk for technical assistance, and what to do when there are technical issues and the systems are completely down. Finally, create policies that address what you would consider zero tolerance for behavior. These may be items that are comparable to time theft or inappropriate behavior, and lay out the repercussions, which may include maybe immediate termination or immediate return to the office based off of the egregiousness of the offense. If you have any questions regarding work from home policies, how to create them, or more examples of them, feel free to reach out at the end of the meeting today. I'm happy to share some additional ideas. And this is Amber, by the way. Work from home employees have to commit to safeguard PHI and other compliance measures. In addition, set up QA techniques to ensure that team members are in fact complying. New hires should provide a photo proof of their workspace, ensure the space meets your established compliance guidelines. The space should be secure and quiet. Family members should not have access to the work environment, nor should any PHI be written down or viewable by anyone else in the home. Also, make certain that your team understands that working from home is not a substitute for childcare. QA techniques could include call analytics, which could alert leadership of a HIPAA violation, inappropriate conversation, claims follow-up audits, and silent monitoring, or even screen sharing. Again, consider establishing zero tolerance audit items that relate to compliance. So this could be some severe compliance violations, children in the workspace, unacceptable customer service like swearing or hanging up on patients. And you should include this in a list of consequences in their work from home agreement. Establish expectations for your team that's working from home. Make sure that they are at least as productive as they were in the office. If their responsibilities change while working from home, of course, accommodate for that shift in the expectation. But productivity needs to be measurable. Ensure your team knows where they stand while working in this new environment. If they're not meeting expectations, put together a performance improvement plan. Team members need to know that they're not meeting expectations, and a collaborative plan should be built to get the team member back on track. The performance improvement plan should include milestones and completion dates. Communication protocols need to be established as well. Decide how a team member will communicate with other teammates, management, IT, customers, and when. For example, if they're experiencing technical issues with their PC or internet, what do? Who do they contact? If they're ill, how and when will they notify a supervisor? What's the expectation from your leadership team for a response? We established a team member line, which is staffed by a team lead 12 hours a day. Team members can use this line to notify when they're experiencing technical issues, when they call off, late arrivals, or early departures. We also created a team-based encrypted chat. Here, team members can communicate with teammates and supervisors to ask questions and even socialize when workload permits. This creates camaraderie amongst the team despite their geographical location. Your leadership team has to commit to regular, consistent, face-to-face communication with their team for their work from home teams. Regular verbal and visual communication helps fight feelings of seclusion and alienation. Your leadership team should use this form of communication for coaching, developing, and all performance improvement steps, in addition to regular check-ins when there are no specific agenda items. This will give the team member the opportunity to feel included. Time management protocols is also a big one. There's a real opportunity when you build a remote workforce and staffing. Working from home allows additional flexibility in scheduling that you would not get in a regular brick and mortar. Tap into resources like students or parents who can work a handful of hours, perhaps in the morning, and then come back in the PM for another few hours. If you provide a service which has peaks or lulls in workflow, and throughout the day or week, the team members with this type of flexibility can better serve these peaks and lulls. If your billers or patient billing team has flexibility after business hours and the work supports it, allow scheduling during evenings or weekends. Create KPIs that support this type of scheduling and reinforce adherence expectations. Team members should be encouraged to take lunches and breaks away from their desk, and additional time is not permitted during scheduled hours outside of bathroom breaks. Considering allowing a percentage of their daily hours worked as an adherence variance to support bathroom breaks is important. You also want to invest in a training program structured for work from home team members. There are free tools and tools for purchase like Trainual, just as an example, to help facilitate work from home training. These tools will allow you to monitor participation, they'll administer testing, they'll set up self-led training and develop training, help you develop training material as well. You'll want to set up ongoing education to support the growth and development of your team, in addition to annual compliance and HIPAA training. It's very important that your distributed workforce receives the same coaching and development that they would otherwise have received in the office. Management should meet with their team regularly to review performance, goals, updates, etc. And team members working from home who do not receive regular feedback are likely to feel unengaged. You want to develop KPIs to help manage these expectations, which leads us to developing KPIs. Creating KPIs to help align expectations and manage outcomes for team members, leadership, and your clients, patients or otherwise, is vital to the success of your work from home program. Establish performance and productivity KPIs by using brick and mortar production or generally accepted standards as a baseline. If your team is not consistently producing equivalent output to your brick and mortar or industry standards, you need to rethink the setup. An example KPI may be a productivity goal, something as simple as a percentage of AR work daily as indicated by an account note, status change date, or follow-up date, or claim bill date as well. Perhaps you use denial rates as a KPI for your work from home team. If your technical denials increase, evaluate the cause. Another common KPI may be your aging as a percentage of your total AR. If your aging increases, evaluate the cause. Establish timekeeping and schedule adherence KPIs. Your leadership team should have visibility to their team's whereabouts, and likewise, your remote team should have access to their supervisors. Your workforce manager will use these KPIs and realized hours worked to schedule team members. We, for example, allow a 10% variance to the scheduled time to accommodate bathroom breaks, etc. We include this into the hours needed to fulfill the business need. Customer service KPIs should be created utilizing tools such as voice analytics and BI data to do this. Example KPIs could be 90% of all customer interactions must pass a QA requirement, or no more than 15% of all customer interactions will result in a suspended billing workflow. These type of KPIs will help promote positive resolution of the customer need. And the ability to track data and compare it to a KPI is essential to your success in any environment, but even more so for a remote workforce where you're pushing autonomy. The ability to track and manage KPIs is vital to the individual and team success, and reviewing KPIs consistently is imperative to keeping high standards and expectations for your remote team members. Dashboards are a great way to keep up with performance as it relates to KPIs. When monitoring dashboards daily, leadership can see trends and red flags quickly and react to team members needing direction. Team members can also take ownership of their performance when using dashboards to evaluate, and leadership can use them on one-on-one coaching sessions. Productivity KPIs and aging KPIs should be fairly simple to track, and tools like Tableau allow for team members of all levels to manage their performance. Tableau is a great tool for managing KPIs. Other examples tracked well through the interface are days in AR, cash collections, bad debt, denials, write-off as a percentage of patient revenue.
One of the most important things you do, obviously, is hiring the right managers to lead this effort. Choosing the right leader for remote teams is critically important. And that right leader, you need to make sure that they develop the job competencies that will make people successful in the job. That includes building behavioral hiring guides, which we're going to talk about, training the interviewers, and then beginning the process. One of the things that's the most important is, with right leaders being critical to your success, you have to have leaders. On the next slide, we'll show you that leaders drive the values. And the values really are indicated by the behaviors of the leader. The collection of the behaviors becomes the culture of the organization. And we contend that culture drives performance, and everyone wants to make sure, regardless of whether we're a small or a large organization, we want to make sure that we get that performance. That is the whole point. Choosing the right leader, developing job competencies. is one of the things that is the most important. And how you do that, there's a process, a job competency process. What you do is you look at people that are in the job presently, and you look at those that are A players. One of the things that I think people forget is that we can look at the people in the job, but we want to make sure we look at those that are doing the job well today. And we develop a long list of job competencies, something 10 to 14 key attributes are typical. And we develop a short list of priority job competencies. We have the line managers look and stack rank those in order of importance, because we want to actually determine what the top 5 to 6 key attributes are. Final validation of job competencies. The senior leaders interview the top 5 to 6 and make sure that they validate those key attributes. From this point, you develop an interview guide. And one of the things that I think people ought to look at, I know that probably everyone will tell me that they have had some experience with building behavioral hiring guides, but it's critically important that you look at these behavioral, next slide please, that you look at the behavioral hiring guides in terms of at-home players, because it's slightly different. And the next slide will talk to you a little bit about how past behavior indicates future behavior. I think all of us would agree that if you have integrity, if you've had integrity in the past, you would certainly have it in the future. But what people don't realize sometimes, unless they've spent a lot of time building behavioral and using behavioral guides, they don't realize how much more predictive they are. During World War II, it was very interesting. The Air Force found that certain pilots were consistently hitting their targets and others were not. And what they found when they evaluated the differential was that the ones hitting their targets were the ones that consistently behaved a certain way. The first thing they did, and if you look today at aviation, and if you look at operating rooms, one of the first things that everyone does is they actually develop a checklist. And that was one of the behaviors that during World War II they found out was critical to the success of pilots. And it continues today, obviously. But so they started hiring differently. They started looking at people that consistently looked at checklists, and they totally changed the outcomes. So my point here is to make sure that you look at those success factors that have been critical in the past, and then you hire to those same behavioral characteristics when you're hiring. Again, it's over 90% predictive if you do it correctly. And there's a point in doing that. In the next slide, we'll talk about how A players' behaviors consistently reflect the values. It's not just about competencies. So many times we have thought it was all about competencies, but it is about behaviors. And a definition of an A player are people who live and mirror the values and behaviors of the organization. That's the how. And that's on the next slide, where we talk about the skills required are the what. And A players are highly engaged, and they consistently deliver business results, and they add value every single day. They act in a manner that motivates and inspires others, regardless of whether they are sitting in the same center or whether they're at home, whether they're virtual. We have found that people that inspire tend to do that regardless of where they are. And they are found typically at all levels of the organization, but you want to make sure that your team is composed of A players in this virtual environment. The reason, obviously, I thought I'd throw a cartoon in here and say the most compelling reason, which I think is pretty obvious, to fill your organization with A players is to be sure that you deliver on your service promise. Howard Schultz made a comment, and I use his slide often, that we should, and it's the next slide, that we should share C players with the competition. Now, I will tell you, I hope you don't share them in Georgia. So we'll send them out of state, okay? Because I know y'all are from Georgia. So I don't mean to share them with one another on this phone call. In fact, you shouldn't. But he was very adamant that you share C players with the competition. And I just thought it was a good thought to talk about. The next slide, we talk about how many organizations only care about competencies. And when we started working in healthcare, we found that was pretty evident. And what happens was, when we talked about why were players not being So not contributing in a way that really was valuable. What we found out was that they were looking for competencies and they were not looking and checking for values. And where you want to have this match of the people that you hire is where the competencies and values come together. And it totally changes the outcomes. And that's how you get, to me, that's how you get the real players, the A players, and that's what you want. The next point is that we need to train interviewers. And how you train interviewers, remember, you use your A players, don't have C players training A players, okay? And one of the things we found that really works, and it has been particularly successful in the world of healthcare, is to use peers. Peers will be tougher on interviewing than the managers, I guarantee you, every time, because they want to work, A players want to work with A players. And however you do it, you heard today some of the ways to train people is to use Zoom, to create videos. There are various options depending upon your size. And you need to certify these interviewers once they're trained. And you also need to create interview guides, and you need to make sure they're consistent. And how you find out if someone's an A player is you use it's called a STAR. You find out the situation, you ask a question, you find out the situation, you find out their action and the result. And if the result mirrors the result you'd like to see, that's an A player. And how you do it is you ask values-based questions and you also ask competency questions, obviously, and they're the same. So when you go to interview people, you can compare, and when everyone starts the comparator at the end of the interviews, and you start comparing applicants, what you can do by using the same interview guide, you can compare apples to apples. And last but not least, there is a slide that shows you that when you use this process, look at the results. This is somewhat of a dated slide. I have others, but I picked this one because it was so evident that this process of using behavioral interviewing for specific job competencies and values gives you great outcomes. So now it's time to begin the process. You've heard a lot today about how you do it, and I would just reiterate that this process works. Hiring A players is the key.
Social distancing has really become the new normal. I think that that when we think about social distancing, is it really possible that it is the new normal? And when experts at the Mayo Clinic think so, Gregory Poland says, I think it's going to become inevitable. Social distancing has proven to be an important public health tool to reduce the spread of COVID-19. And one of the pros for social distancing is the fact that working from home is that workers are healthier mentally and physically, with many communities beginning to reopen slowly. And as we all know from listening to the news, we're thinking about shutting down communities again because of the rise in the COVID cases. But as we continue to open, social distancing from home denies the virus the opportunity to spread disease to coworkers and patients alike. And technology, I'm going to turn this back over to Amber.
Yep. So the technology aspect of setting somebody up to work from home is quite different, obviously, than where we were 5, 10, 15 years ago. The cloud-based services allow your team members to work cohesively in a work-from-home environment. And services like voice over IP or different types of telephony, which allow your team members to work from home just as if they were in a brick and mortar office, are common now. Also, security and compliance with VPN type tools allow team members within our industry to work from home with ease as well. And at the end of the day, the cost of all of this is comparable, if not less, than what you would use in a brick and mortar setting.
Yes, I mean, we make good business decisions based around the working from home environment. Just recently, Siemens has determined to let staff work from home anywhere permanently, where they're the most productive and where they state these changes are associated with the different leadership styles. So again, I mentioned in the beginning, the focus in terms of leadership is more about outcomes than it is about spending time in the office. Return on investment for hospitals, university, and health systems when an employee can work remotely is a clear winner. I'm going to talk about a few opportunities for savings in terms of employees working from home. You do not have to rent or own office space. Aetna shed 2.7 million square feet of office space, resulting in a savings of $78 million per year. While the elimination of brick and mortar buildings would certainly be reduced in a healthcare setting too, the potential implications for remote workers should make this an enormous draw for those of you who can eliminate bricks and mortar or are leasing or renting those. If you're on a campus, like a university campus or something, and the actual elimination of campus space is not an option, what about the ability to relocate that space having an entrepreneurial implication? What new services could you offer from that particular space? And as COVID continues to be across this country, until we get some sort of virus or some sort of information that we can eliminate the virus, then it's just a good idea to think about using your office space for something else. And I mentioned before, employee satisfaction. Happy customers, happy employees ensure you happy customers. There are many other financial benefits to employers, like the elimination of a computer cost from campus to campus, time spent finding space and rounding up employees. There's less disruption in your work environment when the predominant number of employees are remote workers. There are also a cost savings on miscellaneous items we often forget, like do you offer coffee? Do you provide lunches? Do you do other benefits for those who work in the office? It's likely that the temporary switch to remote work could accelerate the adoption of the practice when the crisis ends. And hopefully that will, having a vaccine within some reasonable time frame, we all hope will help us end this crisis. But rather than workers in a cubicle with a desktop computer, employees can even split their work hours between home and office with laptops that can travel with them. Tech companies like Twitter are taking the lead on the permanent shift that's gaining traction as health systems seek cost reductions and employee convenience, or both. Another financial benefit to health system is the ability to manage peak off and on staffing. I've talked about the possibility of us having more work from home orders. If that's the case, then the volumes will decrease at the hospital like they did last time. We've seen an increase since the doors were open, but we see a decrease when hospital admissions and outpatient services, including testing, increases the spread across our communities. There will be a lull in the need for activity from coders, billers, customer service, and collection staff. Having employees at home provides the healthcare provider with better flexibility when distributing the temporarily reduced workflow. And employee satisfaction. Studies have shown routinely that remote employees' productivity continue to reflect a positive trend. To maintain increased productivity at home, home workers, they need regular breaks, set working hours within reason, and a management of a to-do list, all of which has been covered before in this presentation. Knowing or establishing KPIs ensures that staff productivity can meet the standards set by them in leadership. So the time is now. Now's the time to start thinking about a permanent relocation of your employees from home. Look at the budget opportunities. Hopefully we've addressed in this presentation all of leadership concerns about the working from home and showing you that it is not a problem. It is a very open and reasonable thing to do.
Thank you for your attendance for today's presentation. We look forward to hearing from you to support any of your revenue cycle needs. Are there any questions that we can answer for you?
Yeah, so Amber, why don't you go ahead and move to the last slide, just so everyone has your contact information. A couple of things have come in. First, there's been a request. You mentioned the remote work policy and any help defining strong KPIs. Maybe what we can do with that, Amber, if you have something you'd like to share, if you wouldn't mind sending that to me, and I can include it with the packet of information to go out to everybody on Friday. And then, Anne, this is for you. I think this question came across as you were talking about the behavioral interviews. Can you share the competencies and values that you've identified?
Sure. The competent values are defined by the individual organization. So the values, for instance, at JetBlue, obviously, and we've worked in healthcare, typically one of the values in almost every healthcare system we've worked with is caring. So one of the questions you ask, obviously, is give me an example of a time when you had to care for a patient. What was the situation? What was the action? And what was the result? One of the caring examples that I remember from healthcare was a nurse who was applying for a job at Loma Linda Hospital, and she had been a pediatric nurse, and she had literally was around when a child was born with a huge issue, a brain issue, and was determined that the child would not have a long life. And the mother gave the child up for adoption, and this nurse took a leave of absence and became the foster parent for the child until the child passed away 6 months later. That was an example she gave us of caring, and we couldn't wait to hire her. But that's the type of thing you ask. So on the values question, you always ask something related to your values. That's specific to the organization. That was just an example from Loma Linda. Secondly, on the competencies vary by job. One of the things that you want, one of the competencies, and you'll have to check with CaptureNet if this is true for them too, but one of the competencies we found for our at-home agents was that we wanted people that were independent, could make decisions, and could, without having someone stand behind them, give them information, who literally were competent and were really self-assured. And so we asked questions about difficult situations they've had. What was the situation? What was the action? And what was the result? Hope that answers your question.
Okay, got it. Just a reminder, everyone, please use the Q&A box to submit your questions. Here's another one. I don't know, maybe this is one that Janice would like to start answering. What revenue cycle positions lend themselves to a work from home position?
I would say there's a good many of them that lend themselves. Definitely billing, as you can set up the access to your billing system and interfaces into your mainframe system, whatever that is. Billing definitely does. Coding, I've mentioned it before. I think coding has been done from home for a lot of years, maybe bringing coders in once every other 2 weeks or something like that. I think customer service definitely lends itself to at home. Collections can lend itself to at home too, and that's one of the considerations you might want to think about, is how you want to finance the telephone costs, the expense of having your collectors work from home. Some things that do not lend themselves to work from home would be, for instance, cash posting. That would be a very difficult thing. I'm not saying it can't be done, but I think it would be very difficult to do. Anything that you have in terms of scanning, mail, those types of things, I would think would be an on-the-job opportunity. And a lot of the leadership can work from home. I know of several revenue cycle leaders who are spending 3 or 4 days at home and 1 or 2 days in the office now, just so they can check up and touch base and those kinds of things. But leadership can work from home for a limited time, at least each week. So those are all things off the top of my head that I can think do and do not lend themselves to working from home.
Okay, great, thank you. And then how do patients react to patient billing representatives who may be working from home?
Yeah, this is Amber. I can take that one. So candidly, when we first built our work from home team, we were a little bit apprehensive. We were worried that patients calling in would be able to tell that they weren't in an office, and see that they'd have an adverse reaction to that, considering that patient billing reps have access to not only financial information, but PHI as well. And really what we found was quite the opposite. Not only did the patients calling in rarely hear or know that the patient billing rep was not in the office, but when they did, or when it came up in conversation, they were more than okay with it. They're appreciative that the team member was in their community and that they were in fact employed and working from home. They thought it was a cool idea. We set up compliance or KPI rather in order to help monitor this. So we use voice analytics to pick up on things like children in the background, inappropriate conversation, any indicator that the team member may not be where they say they are, where they're approved to be in their work from home space, which helps us manage that. And then of course we have received approval from every single one of our clients in order to establish the work from home team.
Okay, so you mentioned voice analytics, and that actually kind of lends into this next question a little bit. So can you give examples of how you use voice analytics to manage and maintain that quality?
Absolutely. So we use voice analytics in a few different ways. First and foremost, we use it in our QA process for our team. We can pick up on keywords, phrases. We can cue off of inflection and tone. We know when there's a call escalation, when the team member is able to de-escalate the call themselves, or if they are causing the escalation or not effectively de-escalating, which allows us to A, jump in and take the call if needed, B, provide coaching and development, and at the end of the day, we can use that data to help trend the reason for the call, or the reason that the call escalated, or the reason the patient was upset to begin with when they called in. We use this information and provide trending back to our clients. Many times it's education that we can help our clients create to help educate their patient population on the billing process and improve process both on the front end and on the billing end as well. So we'll do things like include educational inserts. We may change verbiage on the inbound telephony lines or the recordings to sort of better address some of the reasons that patients are calling to begin with.
Okay, great. All right, let me just check again in the chat and Q&A. Okay, well, it looks like those are the questions we have for today. So thank you all for participating in the webinar. And of course, thank you, Amber, Ann, and Janice for sharing your expertise. Really interesting information here. And obviously, like we said at the beginning, this is a topic that many of us will be continuing to manage through the foreseeable future. In August, we'll be hosting webinars on Wednesday, August 12th, and on August 26th. And if any of you are leveraging telehealth in your organizations, you'll want to join the August 12th session. That topic is CMS updates to telehealth due to the pandemic. And then on August 26th, the session also focuses on COVID with enhanced techniques for providers facing COVID challenges. So be on the lookout for Georgia HFMA emails with more details and registration links coming in the next week or so. And again, as I mentioned, the presentation today, if you didn't get it in the chat box, you can find it on the Georgia HFMA website under on the top menu, select media, then drill down to documents library, then in case you missed it, then 2020, and then the document noted in the folder as 7/29/20. We really make you work for it, but it's worth it. I think this was a great presentation. That's also where the link will be for the recording of the session. So thanks everybody for joining us today. Stay safe and have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.